Hi, I'm Phil Berman from Balance Catamarans. I'm here in St. Martin, sitting on our 482 in Balance. Talked to a lot of people about what type of passage times can they expect to get on Balance Catamarans. Now that we've had 25 or more boats cross the Atlantic, either from Cape Town to Grenada and then on to Fort Lauderdale, or taking the harder route up the coast of Africa, beating against the trades, and then across into Europe. We've now got a lot of good data points and datum. I think it's very important for people that haven't cruised a lot to recognize that the very most important thing when you're at sea and you're voyaging on a boat is to sail the boat conservatively and carefully, because you're in the middle of the ocean and you don't want to, break your boat, you don't want to damage your boat.
Oh, I tell you, well, it was a long trip. It was 36 days, but it was a really exciting trip because we just got into so many conditions. Dead wind, went up to 35 knots. We really went through everything. Was on every point to sail. I'll give credit to Keith Phillips, the delivery captain. He was a very, very cautious captain. He took care of the boat while I was busy saying, "Hey, let's go faster, let's go faster." He was busy saying, "Hey, let's remember we're in the middle of the ocean. And we're not gonna be able to fix things when they break." And so we were a good yin and yang against each other, and so we really thankfully made it here.
And it's also the case that when you are taking off on a long passage, your boat is going to be as laden as it ever will be. So not only will you be stressing your boat more when you're pushing it really, really hard, but you'll obviously not be traveling quite as fast. In terms of passage times and speeds, obviously there's a lot of factors that will determine what your average mileage a day is on a given passage.
So we'll leave here and head to hopefully St. Helena for a stop if weather and COVID permits, and then from there over to Brazil, hopefully a stop there, and then Grenada.
It's a relatively pleasant sail, a couple 100 miles north of Cape Town. The winds start to move onto the beam and aft, and it's a nice downwind or broad reaching sail to Grenada. So typically boats are going to end up having relatively, fast passage times on that trip. Although once again, it varies dramatically. We've had some passages where people have been plagued with very, very light air, and other passages where they've had ideal air. It's also the case when you get to the northern part of Brazil, you have to punch up through the doldrums, and sometimes the doldrums can be very, very large, and sometimes they can be much smaller. And obviously that will really impact your averages.
Eventful last night. We thought we were going on a downwind sail and it happened to be an upwind sail. So it was a little rocky and rolly. A little bit of a surprise, but we all hung in there and was fine. We had the main reefed at 2 and we had the jib out, so we're sailing along, I guess about 7 average, I would say, maybe actually closer to probably 7.8 average, which was still good. We kept it safe and comfortable.
I'm here on the boat with Captain Joe Landman, who delivered In Balance for us up to France last year, and the doldrums were incredibly wide when they got to the top of Africa, and they basically spent 9 days motoring at 4 knots to conserve fuel to get through the doldrums. So obviously that's going to really bring down, your passage time. Fastest passage we've ever had on it was on a 526, very actively sailed by competitive sailors, and they averaged 230 miles a day from Cape Town all the way to Grenada. So what that means is when you factor in some of the lighter days and the slow days, and you factor in crossing the doldrums, that is just a really incredible average. I wonder if we'll ever see that again, because to achieve average miles a day like that means that there were plenty of days when they were sailing between 15 and 20 knots. Apparently they had strong winds the entire way, and they were really actively sailing the boat. On our 482s on that same trip, it wouldn't be uncommon to have averages of 200 miles a day, give or take. The boat's certainly capable of sailing, knocking off 230 to 250 mile days. But again, when you factor in the lighter days and the doldrums and that sort of thing, I think it's best to route plan for between, say, like 180 and 200 miles a day, conservatively, on that boat. And on the 442, you would back that off another 10%. Obviously, as the boats grow shorter in size and they have less hull fineness ratio and they're displacing much of the same equipment, their top end speeds are not as strong. It is also the case that how you sail on a passage is really up to you. Some of our race focused people are going to be sailing their boat at hotter angles with asymmetrical spinnakers and jibing downwind, achieving, faster VMGs. Other customers would like a more leisurely experience, and they just throw up a big symmetrical spinnaker, tack it off both the bows, and literally, sail the rum line on that big long downwind passage.
So the trip started out downwind, and after the first day, the wind just kind of cut out, and so we were dealing with kind of 10, 12, maybe a 15 knot day would just be, thank God, right on our stern. And so, having to sail, we wanted to conserve our diesel. We didn't know what was going on, and so, figuring out how to move the boat in kind of those soft wind conditions was and it was great to see it. The boat would just hum along, right at half wind speed on the spinnaker, pull us along, and wishing we could get maybe 18 or 20 knots of breeze. Yeah. But super excited about how we could get this boat moving.
Of course, we must all make passages from time to time that require sailing into the wind or very close to it. Here, of course, one cannot expect to be turning the same daily speeds as a cat reaching, but on a balanced catamaran, it's possible to point smartly into the wind between 32 and 38 degrees to the apparent wind, depending upon the sea state, making limited leeway due to our deeply foiled dagger boards or very deep foiled fixed keels for those who have requested them. Here, the passage-making disparities between our cats and others becomes quite significant because balanced catamarans seldom need to motor sail. This means we can carry less fuel, sail faster, and arrive at upwind destinations far sooner than most others. But in the end, I really do want to stress that people that push their boats too hard often run into problems and they have breakages. And I was sharing with Joe the old saying, there's old sailors and there's bold sailors, but there's no old bold sailors. And I think it's important that when you're on a passage, it's to quote the late singer Harry Chapin from one of his songs, it's got to be the going, not the getting there, that's good. What I love about a long passage, the merciful fact that I can make the excuse that my cell phone is turned off and I won't be actively emailing and talking to people. So I get to read a lot of books. I get to listen to music. I get to sit under the stars at night, which I really, really enjoy. Contemplate more spiritual things, if you will, at sea. I find sailing is, for me, a spiritual activity. I've always felt that sailing is a kind of grace and a kind of magic, just to have the wind pushing you along at night. So for those of you that haven't done a long passage, I think you'll really enjoy it. It's a unique experience. And whether you own a balanced catamaran or any other, we certainly think that it's amazing that you have the opportunity to do this sort of thing, because very few people do, and that we're all blessed that we can do it. So stay in balance.